Newcastle United drew 1-1 with Manchester City in their best performance of the season so far on Saturday. Lots of their players were back to their best, and included in that is Joelinton. In this video I'm going to be looking at his performance and also what the change of style that Eddie Howe's going for might mean for his place in the team. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to another analysis video. The dust has settled on Newcastle's draw with Manchester City this weekend. I've already reacted to it with my live reaction on Sunday. Please go and check that out. Sorry this video is a little bit later than Bill. Newcastle United performed really well against Man City, as I said in the intro, and I think that they deserved their point. The point was probably fair on both sides. I don't think Man City were terrible. I think they were a bit slow. I think they were a little bit pensive. I think Erling Haaland didn't have his best game, and this current iteration of Man City, if you stop Erling Haaland, kind of go quite a far way to stopping Man City scoring goals. So there was probably a blueprint in there for other teams and how to stop City, and it's probably, given the fact that Rodri didn't play, opened up the Premier League title race, and Arsenal will have viewed that as a really good result. But we're here to look at Joelinton's performance in particular and give a little bit more of a deep dive into what I think his future is, because it's not that I think he deserves to be out of the team. It's not that I'm advocating for a future without Joelinton. I love Joelinton. I think he's an amazing player. He's certainly been the defining player of the takeover in many ways in terms of his improvement, the fact that he's come into midfield and become this crucial player for Newcastle, moving away from that disappointing start that he had to his career as a striker, all the pressure that was on him as a number 9, moving to midfield has really changed the way he's played. He's really benefited from working with Eddie Howe and that sort of intensity that he's brought to the game as well. But I think there is a bit of a crossroads for him in a sense, based on the start of this season. Newcastle, as we know, and as I've discussed on these videos, have really tried to move away from the intensity as our identity into a more possession-based style and not done very well with it. And a big reason why it succeeded a little bit more on Saturday was the fact that they didn't have the ball as much. That helped them in terms of when they were on the ball, they were better with it. Sandro Tonali coming in really helped as well. But I think one of the bigger casualties of this move has been Joelinton, because Newcastle were not looking to dominate the ball 2 seasons ago when they finished 4th in the Premier League and they got into the Champions League, and they were a really dangerous team to face because they made other teams fear their transitions, and that's what Newcastle, as we've said on these videos before, this season struggled with against Fulham, Wolves, at times Tottenham as well. They've struggled with the transitions against them. Man City were always going to set up at St James's to dominate the ball. That's what they do. That's what Pep Guardiola lives and swears by, is dominating possession, even without Rodri and Kevin De Bruyne. Rico Lewis came in, who was next to Gundogan and Mateo Kovacic. And it really gave Newcastle the blueprint for how they wanted to play the game. It allowed Joelinton much more freedom to attack the game better going forward and not be burdened by the need to pass the ball so much. I don't have the stats to hand. I'll put them on the screen from FB Ref now. I can't remember them. I'm not somebody who, as you know, likes to live and breathe on the stats and go into that much detail with stats on these videos. I like to talk about my own opinions and the eye test, and I think we don't really need stats to tell us that Joelinton is much better in transitions, with the ball at his feet, running forward, breaking the lines and destroying the other team's midfield play as well, than he is on the ball. And if Newcastle are going to progress into a more possession-based team, then there's got to be a question over where Joelinton goes. I think the fact that he was back to his best in the team that was more reliant on transitions on Saturday means that the idea of what he does in the team is kind of more set in stone than ever. He isn't a player who can play the ball forward, dictate the ball, and isn't going to be a player who's going to thrive in a team with 70% possession when the game is played in front of them. Still plays a lot of progressive passes. I think he's in the top 87 percentile, I think, from the FB Ref stats, if I'm correct. That's still decent numbers, but the fact that he doesn't keep the ball very well, his pass accuracy is around 85%, which for a team that has the ball as much as Newcastle are aiming to, you need sort of more 90s, early 90s, mid 90s if you want to be at the elite level. That's what Bruno can bring. That's what Tonali can bring. And I do wonder if the team will move past Joelinton in a sense. When the opposition's attacking, he can cut the game out. He's blocking is phenomenal. That's his strength. He's really good at reading the game as well and putting his powerful legs and powerful strength into that midfield to dominate it. That's what he brings, and obviously the discipline that the discipline or lack thereof, if you like, that he brings to the team. He's not afraid of a professional foul, which obviously helps a lot. He's not afraid of those, which is a very popular term at the moment, the dark arts. He kind of embodies that when Newcastle do it. He's leading from the front, and that was why Newcastle lacked a lot last season in terms of their intensity, in terms of their midfield presence was lacking, because Joelinton wasn't there. So there has to be a warning against taking Joelinton out of the team going forward. Absolutely, that's not in dispute, and I don't want you to watch this video and think that, oh, Harry's saying that the team will be better without Joelinton and he's advocating for Joelinton's exit. I'm not doing that at all. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. I think he's vital to Newcastle's present and future, but you can't deny that this season there's evidence to suggest that there's issues and problems that probably need to be fixed in terms of the direction of the team. I've said after the Fulham game that was the problem. Newcastle didn't have an obvious way of playing that they wanted to do. They were caught between possession and intensity and ended up doing nothing. Joelinton was the poorest of the midfield three in that game, I think. Obviously, he was on the wrong side. He was playing on the right. And I think there is another point here that Newcastle... Joelinton isn't a jack of all trades, despite the fact that he's gone from being a powerful forward player to a box-to-box powerhouse in midfield. He isn't a jack of all trades. He can't do everything. He's very good at what he does, which is breaking up the play, using his strength, and getting the ball forward quickly and breaking the lines. That's what he was good at as a forward. He's never been a great goal scorer, just as he isn't a great creator. The fact that he was moved onto the right against Fulham really exposed the lack of quality that he has in possession more than even if he was on the left. Then he played against Man City, was able to turn the ball over a lot more, was able to just rely on passing the ball forward, not having to keep the ball, not having to recycle it so much, and not having to think about what he does. It really suited him better, and he obviously won 4 aerial duels in that game as well, which is huge. That was why Newcastle got an upper hand in midfield as well. The aerial battle, the physicality, that's what he brings. We know what Joelinton brings, but if Newcastle are to try and go, because it feels like that's what they're trying to do, I think they've understood, and we saw players coming off with cramp, Tonali and Trippier, the physical aspect of the intense game that they played, the high pressing that they played with on Saturday. We saw the after effects of that. We know that Newcastle think that isn't fully sustainable. They've tried to move away from it. Eddie Howe wants to be more possession-based. But will Joelinton be left behind by that? Because they've tried that, and he's been the one who's come unstuck. They've gone back to type, and he's suddenly found his feet again. Is there a way to find a balance between the two things and allow Joelinton to still have his strengths while also dominating the ball and playing it forward and being the team that doesn't exert themselves too much? I wonder if that is the case. If you look at teams like Liverpool and Manchester City who begin to dominate the ball a lot more, they don't have players like Joelinton who do that. It's more like what Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool did when they had powerful players like Wijnaldum, Henderson, Fabinho, those types of players. Not the same type of player by Joelinton at all, but the whole point of that midfield under Jurgen Klopp, who played very similarly to the system that has got the most out of Joelinton at Newcastle, transitional high pressing style. It was more about energy, it was more about quick turnovers, it was more about getting the ball to the front three, which is what Joelinton does really well. When Liverpool have transitioned into dominating the ball and building up the play, there isn't any room for players like that. It's more diminutive. It's more diminutive at Man City as well, De Bruyne and Silva, Foden, those types of players. So if Newcastle are to try and move into that sort of dominating the ball sort of style, where does Joelinton fit in? And that's my wonder. And I think it's not something you can teach him. He's very good at what he does. The great thing about Joelinton is that what he does is usable across the pitch. You know, he wasn't a great goal scorer even as a forward, but he was very good at running with the ball and using his power and his strength and winning the ball high with a press. That's what he can do in midfield, just further back, and that's why it's worked. But you can't make him be great on the ball. You can't make him be creative or a great goal scorer. And Joelinton's come unstuck. It's because he's being asked to do something that he can't do. It was the same reason why he struggled under Steve Bruce as a striker. It was the reason he struggled in the game at Fulham playing on the right of the midfield three just a couple of weeks ago. So is there a sell-by date with Joelinton in the team? I'm not suggesting that I want him to go. I think he's brilliant. I think he's been arguably he's been Newcastle's most important player stylistically up until this point, but Newcastle are changing their style and he could be left behind. I'm not advocating for that, as I say. I think he's brilliant. I think he's got a crucial part to play, but he's the one who's suffering most in this sort of middle ground between the two styles. It was proven with in a negative sense at Fulham and a positive sense, crucially, against Man City, when he really made the most of that ability to turn the ball over, use his power, overpower Kovacic, Gundogan and Rico Lewis, who for me were the reason why City struggled in that game. They couldn't get that foothold. They were too passive in possession. They didn't get Haaland into the game enough. The way that the space was dealt with by Newcastle was always really good. It was always in the midfield area behind the play, never behind the line of Dan Burn and Fabian Schär where Haaland could have got in space. It was a really well marshalled tactical performance by Newcastle, and Joelinton was absolutely crucial to that. But the problem is that when they go to Everton next week, they're most likely going to be asked to play with the ball again, and that's where the old issues will come up. Eddie Howe's got this issue to deal with, this crossroads for Joelinton. He's the one who'll suffer the most if they really go for this possession-based style. And what happens to Joelinton going forward? Can he improve? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm not saying that I have all the answers here. I've just something I've noticed that I think is worth a question. So please don't think that I'm saying that Newcastle need to get rid of Joelinton. I'm absolutely not saying that at all. It's just a little bit of an issue that I can see on the line. If Newcastle go with this thing, Joelinton might end up being the player to fall by the wayside longer term. Thanks very much for joining me in this video. Like, share and subscribe. Please continue to help me grow the channel. I'll be back to react live to the Wimbledon Cup game either tomorrow night or Wednesday morning. Cheers. Thank you.